He's a sketchy guy.
Absolutely terrible.
Oh my God, that scares me.
So we're out here testing with Prime. Got a race this weekend, so I wanted to get a little bit of testing and change some gearing. Trying to get a couple of virgin road tests, so we're just staggering the tire marks each pass that he does. Get an idea of what it would be if he had to go out first pair, first round.
What kind of cigarette? Oh, now you're. Oh shit.
The flammable kind?
Oh no.
What does that symbol say right there? Oh, it's number 3. So do it for Dale. Do it what it is.
Number 3.
That's what it means.
God.
Cigarette.
If the symbol's upside down, it don't mean anything. Yeah. Oh, okay. That's
Cigarette safe.
Well, no, at that point. 93.
Smells like money.
Yeah, that 93.
Yeah, you just use the can, right?
93
There's
right
93 in the can.
Yep.
Then I had like 10 people message me, you run 93 in your truck. I'm like,
I know. I had a bunch of people messaging me the same thing. They're like, Dad, I didn't know Prime runs 93. I was like, take it easy.
Yeah, right. You said take it easy. Hold on. Before you get too excited.
He's a sketchy guy.
Absolutely terrible.
Oh my God. Transwood. Is it fuel?
He licked it?
Yeah. Easy way
what
to
if
know.
it was pip juice, motherfucker?
Oh, wait, no, it's pip juice.
Yeah, I got it.
No, it was pip juice.
I don't think there's anything from a car that I'd be like glad to taste.
Let me taste it. I got it.
Well, you know, it's the tailgate, right?
All right, they made a couple of changes, and then I think they're gonna make another one real quick. Took a look at, launch RPM, looked at the video, compared it to the log, checking for, where it actually broke loose and got some wheel speed and stuff like that.
We're not idling.
So it spun the front, but it tends to do that quite a bit. A lot of the runs that I see them do, the fronts are spinning, but I mean, it's all-wheel drive. That thing's still moving pretty good, even when it's doing that. So trying to tame that down. That was just on gate, so they're gonna try to turn it up a little bit, see how it does.
Okay, so we're getting ready to go test. Just getting the truck pulled into the trailer. You Coming straight in? Hello, sir.
Oh, god damn, that thing is bright. I'm not used to being on that side of it. Actually, I think it's turned all the way up.
I'm not sure what I even need to do with tires because the suspension shit that we did is right. It's gonna hit the tire harder. So I may need more air in the tire, otherwise it's gonna wrinkle too much and kind of unsettle everything. So, not too sure.
Oh, I forgot those were the new ones.
Yeah, new tires, new suspension setup, and new power management technique. So this is probably going to be a shit show. Or perfect.
Expected. It was a pile of shit, but there were some good things about it. So gotta look at the log, gotta look at the video, see what the front did, see what the rear did, look and see if it actually used that table with the timing retard. Gotta look at a bunch of stuff and then hopefully make something that's significantly better on the next one. But there was just a lot of new things. Tires are new, suspension's new, shocks, different setting, boost was different setting, RPM was different, and that table was enabled. So we'll see what it all showed. Smooth as hell. I don't know what it looked like, but I didn't have to pedal once. I stayed in it. I felt the timing retard, but it didn't slow me down. I felt it actually manage things. So, what's this for?
I took video on there too.
Oh, nice. All right, so that second one went a lot better. I'm still making tons and tons of changes all at the same time. You know, I don't recommend doing it this way. You should go out and test as few variables at a time. But we just changed so much and we need to sort out so much that I'm making my best guess. If you know less about your vehicle and how it behaves, then you should probably limit the variables that you're testing each time. So the first one that we did, it bit hard in the beginning. We had a pretty high tire pressure. It was like 16 pounds or something like that. So it bit still because the suspension did separate, but it immediately rebounded. And I think what ended up happening, it was hard to see in the video, but the front end traveled too fast and maxed out almost immediately. And so that took weight off of the rear. It was able to spin. The cool thing was the table that we set up, the timing retard table, it stepped in and it actually brought wheel speed back down. The problem is I wasn't really ready for it. I didn't know what it was going to feel like. And so I thought something was going wrong, so I pedaled, and then I got back in it, and it hooked everything that it had. So it was a good test overall. It showed what the suspension was doing. So it enabled me to make a shock change on the next one. So when I was driving out there, the shocks felt really, really stiff. I was afraid that it was going to be a little bit too stiff because I don't have double adjustables. I can't change them independently. So I want it to be stiff enough to where when we hit the tire, it doesn't immediately suck back up and rebound, but I can't have it too tight to where it wants to separate too slow. So I took 2 clicks out of that and tightened up the front so that the front would come up slower, and then we lowered the tire pressure down to what we normally run. And all of that ended up working so good with mechanical grip that the timing table that was doing work the first time around didn't even have to step in. So I mean, it was a win and a loss. I didn't get to test actually staying in the throttle with that timing retard, but the suspension changes worked. So I mean, that's still a win because it took the power that we put into it. What I want to see now is how much power will it take, knowing that that timing table is going to work now and it's going to be there as my safety net. I'm just going to hit the crap out of it and see if it takes all of it. If it takes all of it, awesome. The next suspension change that I just made, just tightening up the front a little bit more because there was a little bit of wheel speed and then it gripped, and I think that was the suspension maxing out a little bit too early still. So I'm going to slow that down a little bit more and hope that it hooks all of that. If it doesn't, I'm just going to stay in it, and I want to see how that timing table reacts when I'm actually staying in it. I don't get scared of it and I come off the throttle. So that's what we're testing on this next round. Made a couple of changes again, but fewer this time. So we're honing in on where we need to be. Left pretty good. The time was okay, but it was smooth, and it showed me that it needed more power. So that's a good thing. Okay, so obviously something went wrong with that last pass, which is really disappointing because I think it was going to do really good. The suspension reacted really well in the second pass. We just didn't have enough power in it, and I fed a lot of power to it. We were getting ready to see that thing make a hit, and I didn't understand the behavior at the time, but I was backing up. We had to go back and forth a little bit because I kind of missed the groove, and I guess that just wigged out the trans brake solenoid or something in my wire. Maybe it was complete luck that it happened, but I grabbed the trans brake and let go, and it was still on trans brake.
And then when I started trying to figure out what was going on, like second gear I had it, third gear was fine. When I put it into first, I thought it was acting like it was in neutral because I didn't rev it up that much. I was scared to rev it or mess anything up. And neutral was reverse and park worked normal. So I was like, I have 2 reverses. Like, what the hell is going on with this? I go park, reverse, neutral is still reverse, and then first gear. So we didn't actually like think about it until we were on our way home that reverse was always engaged. So we checked it just now this morning. I crawled under there and the trans brake solenoid was active pretty much all night. We probably should have checked it last night. And so it was kind of hot. I mean, it wasn't bad, but I mean, it was warm, and it's been engaged all freaking night. So that's what happened. For some reason, I got to figure out whether the button failed or what's going on with that. I think the solenoid works fine. I went under there and I just clicked it manually. I think the button is what failed, which pisses me off because it's Motion Raceworks $50 button, and I'm gonna need another one. Well, we gotta verify that's what it is first. The other thing that it could be is that somewhere where I have my wire routed for the button is being grounded out. Because when I'm engaging the trans brake button, I'm grounding it. So power is to it all the time. My other wire, that's the problem wire. As soon as I let go of that, I realized that it was grounded. Gotta find out where there's a ground being applied that's not supposed to be applied, either in the button or on the pathway to the solenoid. So that's what we're gonna check out now. And then try to get a button if it's the button.
You're the one who wants to be in the video all the time.
Well, you can, maybe. You wanna trade? So like I thought, the trans brake solenoid was warm because it was powered all night, or grounded all night. So it drained the shit out of the battery, and now we can't get it started. Both our jump boxes are dead.
Dude, I can't hear you over this race car.
So hopefully it's just a button.
You gonna start it?
We can. Just wait for it to charge a little bit. It's charging right now. Okay, so what we ended up finding out is I think that port failed in the Holly. Obviously we were getting ground on that wire. It wasn't supposed to be getting ground, so we disconnected the button to see if the button was failed, and it was just on all the time. Disconnected that, it wasn't the problem. So we went over to the ECU side to see if the ECU was sending a ground signal and it wasn't supposed to be, or to see if the harness had a ground signal when it wasn't supposed to be. Because then that would indicate that like there's a wire rubbed through somewhere and it's touching ground. We looked at it and disconnecting the harness, there was no ground on the harness. It was coming from the pin on the ECU. So I've run into this once before. When the ports fail, sometimes they fail and just become a ground pathway. I do have one other port that I can use that I'm not using. It's an input, but it kind of sucks because I was wanting to be able to do front wheel speed and rear wheel speed. And if this ECU just lost that port permanently, then I'm gonna have to deal with only one or the other, which is probably fine considering how well the traction control table that we did the other day, based on not any wheel speed, just based on RPM, did. I think it would be better if we did it with front wheel speed. So we can get by, I think, with what I want to do, missing that input. But worst case scenario, when we take the car down for a significant amount of time, at some point we can just send the ECU into Holly and hopefully they can fix it up. But yeah, I mean, the ECU's 4 years old basically, you know, and we've had one port fail. That's not terrible. So I'm gonna move that port right now, reset everything in the ECU to operate off of that port, and then we'll go out and test it out, make sure it works still. So we fixed it. Gonna give you an idea of what we did. Don't do what we did previously. So I know you're not supposed to use the inputs for like directly to anything, especially like a solenoid. But I did. So the trans brake solenoid is activated by ground from a button that I have on the steering wheel. It's not a signal into the ECU and then a signal out from the ECU to a relay to the solenoid. It goes directly from my button to the solenoid. The problem is directly off of that, I have the input into the ECU. Now, keep in mind, I've been doing this for 3.5 years like that, and it hasn't affected anything. It's worked perfectly fine. Finally crapped out the other day, so you know, here we are. So I mean, I think I'm gonna start being a little bit more good about using relays because I went to the available port that we had left to fix this whole scenario, and it was also messed up. I guess we messed that up a while ago and I just forgot about it. So probably from the same thing. So I had to use, the only other port that I had left was what we were using for rear wheel speed. But since the traction table that we're using right now is actually completely RPM based, I don't even need rear wheel speed. I already know that we have too much slip in the transmission. We'll deal with that at a later date. I need to actually measure transmission pressure. So long story short, we don't really need rear wheel speed. So I repurposed that input to for the trans brake stuff. So that's now the trans brake input, and it's done through a relay. So it should all be good. The bump should work. We're gonna test it right now in the garage and just make sure everything goes to plan. We'll hold down the button for a while, make sure that trans brake solenoid is still gonna work for us because it was literally engaged all night. It drained the battery. It was just, we should have checked it before, but we didn't. So yeah, we're gonna make sure that it actually works. Tanya changed the oil, but she's busy taking selfies over there.
Excuse you.
I guess we just load up, and then it's early morning that we got to head out to Oklahoma tomorrow. Oklahoma, Mexico. That's a city you probably never heard of. And yeah, we're probably going to be leaving at like 2 in the morning. So got to have everything ready tonight. Testing went well last night, well enough. I would have liked, 1 or 2 more passes, but it went well enough to where I think I got a good guess depending on what road surface that we're on. So get to it, see how it goes.
Driving around, I guess, but then we gotta load up and get packed and try to get some rest before we go.